Human resources, as the name clearly states, involves humans. Yes, people. How many people an organization needs, how business circumstances affect how many people the organization will need, and how to get them are at the core of human resources. In this unit, we take up planning and recruiting human resources. We'll take a look at the planning strategy, determining the labor demand, the advantages and disadvantages of eliminating a labor surplus, as well as avoiding a shortage, recruitment policies to make job vacancies more attractive, the sources of job applicants, and the recruiter's role in the whole recruitment process. As with forming a strategy to most effectively market and sell an organization's goods or services, meeting the staffing needs to accomplish that end also requires a plan. Now, step one is to forecast personnel needs and supply and demand. Will there be a surplus where there'll be a problem to get and attract quality employees, or will there be a shortage of able, qualified, and willing workers? It's up to a firm's human resources to determine the supply and demand for workers and figure out whether there are enough qualified individuals within the firm to meet the need. This is called forecasting. Organizational strategy also implements the plan, and this in turn is followed by an evaluation of the results. Effective forecasting can involve both statistical research or intangible judgment. Now, both have their places. If a situation is common or at least has a small element of history, statistical studies may prove invaluable. Current or past trends can be studied with the idea that history does tend to repeat itself, and a former set of conditions and circumstances will again repeat themselves. If a company has been through a recession before, for example, well, there can be some data on hand to show managers how that matter was handled. Were employees laid off? Were they furloughed? Did they have hours cut? Now, the same action plan might work again. If the firm handled its response to the condition poorly, the information on file might actually provide valuable information in letting the current management team know what to avoid or what to do differently. Now, sometimes there is no precedent. The firm has never faced a particular situation before, and in that case, a reliance on sound judgment might be the right course of action. Now, we may not like the term best guess, but sometimes the best part of guess can indeed be the best alternative. There are several ways available for management to forecast the demand for labor. There's the trend analysis. An organization might expect the conditions of the past to continue on a course that can be projected into the near future. Now, as a radio and television news broadcaster, over the years I began to notice that there was a better than even chance that tomorrow's weather would be pretty much the same as today's in most cases. And the longer that trend continued, the more it seemed to fit the pattern. That is, until the weather changed drastically. But even so, you can develop a trend line from winter to spring in noting that the days tend to be getting progressively warmer with more sunshine and clearer skies. And then over time you have the statistical information that shows that it starts getting progressively cooler from the late summer into the fall and then winter. The statistics in the trend analysis are called the leading indicators. Now, these are measures that can be used in predicting future business and economic events and conditions as well. The point is that leading indicators are objective and can be measured. From a sales perspective, for instance, it would be possible to look at spring clothing sales volumes from the past season. Then in the late fall or winter, those figures can be used to help store managers plan for the amount of inventory that'll be needed for the next spring season. Applying this to labor demand, the manager will then have a better idea of how many sales personnel will be needed to serve the store's customers and how many will be needed on particular shifts. In determining the labor demand, there comes the process of identification. Human resources determines which jobs can be filled internally and where there's turnover likely. The next step in the process is goal setting. Now, this is where we assign numbers to the needs. In this case, we are looking at how many workers will be needed for a job and whether there'll be a surplus or a shortage of labor. Then human resources determines how to deal with the situation. There are numerous advantages and disadvantages to both eliminating a labor surplus or avoiding a shortage. In dealing with a surplus, there are fast but hurtful methods to deal with the situation. There's downsizing. There can be pay reductions or demotions. Now, the problems with these are that they tend to hurt more and reduce employee motivation, and of course increase the possibility of losing some of the best employees. Now, some less hurtful methods may be the hiring freeze, natural attrition where workers who voluntarily leave are not replaced, and there can be early retirements or retraining. On the other hand, it's also necessary to plan for avoiding labor shortages. Now, a fast but often rugged solution is required overtime. Now, this action can be taken instantly and requires no more than the boss's order. While overtime is often welcomed by employees, too much can exhaust workers and may also lower morale. A firm can use temporary workers. Now, work can be outsourced to other companies that can either make the product or provide the service. Employees can be transferred or retrained. Now, this approach can be expensive, but could also enhance the quality of a firm's human resources. There's the hiring of new employees, which can be slow and expensive, but also strengthen the organization to meet future expansion. In our modern age, technology can also be an option as a substitute for labor. How many workers has the company replaced, for instance? Now, this alternative could, however, be slow and costly and difficult to reverse in changing conditions. Technology, though, can also improve a firm's long-term performance. Another function of human resources is to set up recruiting policies to make job vacancies more attractive to prospective candidates. Often the easiest and most effective search for new talent can take place right inside the organization. Internal recruiting has the advantage of being a pipeline to potential candidates who already understand the organization and maybe have even been doing the job in question for some time. Internal recruiting can be through the form of promotions or advancement tracks where employees can actually train for more advanced positions in the future. Being at the top of the market in pay can also attract top quality candidates. Now, top pay does help keep your current employees and keep them in the pipeline for advancement. The pay may also be enough incentive to attract others from within the industry, with other firms, or possibly even from competitors. So where do we find job applicants? Well, as we've been mentioning, sometimes the best candidates from our own organizations, meaning they can be reached through internal postings. Firms make their own open announcements and publish them on their various websites or other internal organs. The internal posting can also alert existing employees who can then tell others outside the firm who know that they could be good additions to the company. Current employees telling others outside the company ties into the next form of recruiting applicants through referrals or from those interested job seekers who would apply directly. Now, these methods are inexpensive and even reach out to potential candidates who are already somewhat sold on the company and will take the initiative to apply, meaning they self-select themselves. One problem is that some who come through referrals or are approached by company employees is that those sought out may have attitudes and qualities similar to those who tell them about the openings. Now, there may be a lack of new ideas, and there's the possibility of perceived unfairness, especially if the outsider happens to be a relative of someone already in the organization. There's newspaper advertising, which can attract lots of applicants, but many of them are unsuitable. Electronic recruiting is gaining popularity both through websites and social media, and that gives an organization access to a global labor market, and it's inexpensive and convenient. As with newspapers, though, many unqualified or unsuitable applicants can be attracted. Public employment agencies are another source. Now, they're inexpensive and provide already screened applicants. Private employment agencies can be helpful, especially in recruiting white-collar and management candidates. Private agencies do charge fees, and they can be a bit pricey. On the upside, though, the private agencies do provide a number of helpful services, such as referring candidates who do meet specific criteria. Private agencies can also work as go-betweens to discreetly approach potential candidates who are already employed without risking that person's current job.